Hi everyone, it's me. Welcome to today's video. We are wrapping up our month of October reads today. So October as a reading month, I feel like was quite interesting. I definitely read a lot of fantasies. I read quite a few new releases, but I also tackled some books that have been on my TBR for a very, very long time. So we've definitely got a mix to talk about today. First up though, for our reading stats, I did end up reading 12 books in the month of October. 2 of those books were over 1,000 pages long, so I think we did quite well this past month. 6 of those were fantasy, 2 romance, 2 fiction, 1 thriller, and 1 classic. Go me. October monthly TBR was 5 out of 5. We completed all of those, so of course pat on the back for doing that. And I also actually reread a few books through audio this past month. It's something new that I'm trying. It's helping me get into audiobooks, I feel like, as well. But yeah, I've been doing this thing where I reread books through audio, and it just gives me this wonderful experience of reliving some of my favorite books but through a different format. So the rereads I listened to this past month, not included in my final tally of books, so this is not included in the count of 12. I reread The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V. Schwab, and then I partially reread Catabatus by Arv Kuang and A Man Called Ove by Frederick Bachman. So we had those 3 going on through audio kind of throughout the month, like on and on sporadically, just like very spread out. But shall we just get into the books now? I think we should. I think it's time. The very first book I picked up this month was a very epic one. I like starting off a reading month with, like, you know, a very impactful read. I feel like it definitely just sets the tone of what your reading month is going to look like, so I love that. But I started with Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. You guys all know I read this book because I did post a dedicated reading vlog for this reading experience. Because it is 1,300 pages long, it is now officially the longest book I have ever read, so that's just a nice fun fact. But yeah, I'm not going to elaborate too much on this one in this wrap up because there's an entire reading vlog dedicated just to this book on my channel. If you have not watched it yet, definitely go check it out. Don't worry, it is spoiler free if you have not jumped into this series yet. But this is the second book in the Stormlight archive. So the first one is The Way of Kings. This is, of course, a high fantasy. It's one of those really long, spanning, very vast stories that is just very hard to encapsulate in a plot synopsis. But essentially, we are set in a war-torn land, and we follow a few different characters that all come from very different backgrounds, very different upbringings, with very different personalities as they try and figure out what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad in this land of war. And we really do explore psychology, we explore decision-making that has to be done in war, and just the theme of honor is very present in this series. The Way of Kings, the first book, was so good, but this book was like perfection to me. It was absolutely incredible. I think in this one we just see more of our characters colliding with each other, like their paths come together. There's, I think, a helicopter outside. I hope my microphone doesn't pick that up. You know what, maybe I'll just wait a few seconds, so just in case you do hear it. I don't even know if it's a helicopter actually, it's just like a very loud aircraft outside. Okay, it's gone. Anyways, yeah, we do see more of our characters coming together in this one. And for me, like, that is the most exciting moment of a high fantasy multi-POV book where you're following these multiple stories for so long. And then suddenly, like, they finally meet each other. We got so many moments like that in this book, and I am just obsessed with it. It was an absolute roller coaster, but at the same time, I found that this book felt a lot more cohesive than The Way of Kings. Like, The Way of Kings was a great book. Like, I rated it a 4.5, and it was an amazing intro to the world, but I feel like especially at the beginning things felt a little bit disjointed because we were kind of like jumping around from time to time. We had like 3 different prologues in the first book, so it just felt a little bit like, whoa, like what the heck is going on? Everything just felt more tightly packed, as tightly packed as a 1,300 page book can be, but everything felt very cohesive, like it went together. There was a lot of thought put into the order of the events that were occurring and how they were being presented to you, and it was just the perfect second book where you have settled into the world already, so you can just use all of your focus and brain power on the emotions and characters and what is going on with everyone's story arcs, because now you finally feel like comfortable in this world. I also do need to just bring up the fact that there is the best romance subplot in this book that was so unexpected for me, because I honestly hated the one in Way of Kings. The little romance subplot made me feel really, really icky and uncomfortable, but the one in this was so good. It was making me giggling. It was making me blush. Like, why is a book that looks like this making me blush? I don't know, but it was one of those romance subplots that like nothing really happens, but it just kind of leaves you these little crumbs. You get the vibe of it, and that's just enough. Like, it's the most delicious little morsels of crumbs that you could find, and they're so delicious that you're happy with just those crumbs, and you honestly don't even need any more than that. Love that in here. Lots of tropes I didn't expect. I am so excited for the third book. I'm a little bit scared because it definitely feels like we are going to expand way more in the third book, in this world, in this universe. And so I was just talking about how in a second book you feel like, yes, I've settled into this world, I know what's going on, now I can just follow the story. I feel like in the third book we're gonna have to do a lot of work again to like relearn things, learn new things. I'm excited, but I'm also scared. The next fantasy book that I read was Dawn of the Firebird by Sarah Mughal Rana. This is not gonna stand up because it's a very floppy paperback, but this book is absolutely gorgeous. This is Sarah's debut fantasy novel, and it's so beautifully written, like very descriptive writing. If we're talking about writing styles, this complete opposite to Brandon Sanderson writing. You guys know my Brandon Sanderson plain chip analogy, where his writing is very much a plain chip, but it's a high quality plain chip. You know, it's very basic, but it's very effective in delivering these complex worlds and character arcs that he has to. Sarah's writing, complete opposite. Very descriptive, very flavorful chip, lots of seasonings in there, lots of descriptors. In this one, we follow Camilla. She's lived in a small village with her mother her entire life, and she's never met her father, who is actually the emperor. But because Camilla's mother is part of this smaller, like very not powerful tribe, her father's really just like cast them on the outside, you know, like, I don't care about you, you guys go live in your village, do whatever you want. So he's never really accepted them into his family. But at the beginning of this book, there is this very traumatic raid on Camilla's village that leaves her in this place where her magic flares, like it comes out. She flees to see the emperor, and the emperor actually accepts her now because she has magical powers, and now she is seen as more valuable. She slowly settles into that life, but tragedy strikes again, and Camilla ends up in a situation where she now has to infiltrate the enemy kingdom's military academy. So Camilla is this character who constantly gets displaced over and over and over again. She's constantly trying to seek this feeling of belonging because she's never really had a family that like she really, really truly feels right, like she fits into. So there's a lot in this book about seeking your identity, finding where you belong, finding a family, really. And we love that found family trope, you know we do. But this is just a very beautiful story. The magic system is very interesting, and I absolutely love the way that Camilla in this book went through her grief. I think it was done in a very interesting way where she was, I'm not going to say too much, but she was doing these really interesting things with her memories, and a lot of the stuff she was doing really shaped her character, influenced her character as she grew up. This is one of those fantasies that has quite a few time jumps in it, kind of reminiscent to the Poppy War, where as you're reading the first book, you follow our protagonist like through these different stages of life, and you do have quite a few significant time jumps in there. I just feel like that makes a fantasy story like this feel so much more realistic, because like it's not like everything is happening within a span of a few months, you know what I mean? Like we're taking years, like many years to really aid in this development and growth of our character. One thing that made this book a little bit difficult for me to read was some of the war strategy. I honestly found to be a little bit complex, and I didn't quite understand a lot of what was going on with the war strategy, if I'm gonna be completely honest, but that is a me problem. So that some of that stuff was a little bit confusing for me, but overall, beautiful read. I would definitely highly recommend this one. This is the first book in a trilogy. The next fantasy is more of a romantasy, but I read The Rebel and the Rose by Catherine Doyle, which was such an interesting experience for me because going into this book, I thought this was going to be a duology. I thought this was the second book to the Dagger and the Flame duology and like was going to conclude the story, but surprise, it's not a duology, it's going to be a trilogy. But I'm also not complaining because I do really love this world and the story, and you know, I'm not going to complain about having a third book to read in this world. But we are set in the city of Fantôme. We have two clans, the Order of the Daggers and the Order of the Cloaks. The Cloaks are thieves, the Daggers are assassins, and they are just rivals. They both kind of control the city because they have so much power. They're not like the official rulers of the city, but because they just, you know, they're so powerful, they have a lot of influence on, you know, what goes down. In the first book, our protagonist, Seraphine, loses her mother and kind of like all she has at the beginning. So she ends up needing to flee. She finds safety in the Order of the Cloaks and ends up needing to train to be a thief. However, while all of this is going on, the Order of the Daggers has actually put a mark on her. And the person who is assigned to assassinate her is this, you know, brooding shadow daddy type character. And so we get into this whole cat and mouse situation in the first book. This world is really fun. There's a little bit of alchemy involved because we have this substance called shade, which is where the magic kind of stems from in this world. And I will say, like, when you listen to the plot synopsis of this book, I feel like it sounds very similar to a lot of other romanticises out there. I'm not gonna say it's like overly like anything like reinventing the entire wheel, but what I will say is I was very surprised at the amount of uniqueness in the story. It felt very refreshing because of the way the story was going. Like, there are quite a few fun new things and twists that are thrown into there that does differentiate this from other romanticises, in my opinion. It feels like you are getting that feeling of a romantasy. Like, when you want to scratch that romantasy itch, this does give that all to you, but at the same time, it's not overly like copy paste same. I'm always very impressed at how deep and expansive this world feels and how far we get into exploring the magic in this one, because for a romantasy, I feel like a lot of romantasies don't really go too deep into the magic and world. They just focus on the romance, so I appreciate that in this one. We do also get more into saints and prophecy and everything as the story goes on, and it's just a fun read. Like, there are bits of the romance part that kind of make me like roll my eyes a little bit. Just a few moments where our two characters will be looking at each other, and every time they see each other, his jawline has to be described every single time Seraphine looks at him, and it's just like, okay, I get it. He has a chiseled jaw. So there's a little bit of repetition that is a bit overdone for me in that way, but I love it. There's a lovely found family. We do blend in cozy vibes with high stakes vibes very well in this one, and I do always say if you loved like Heartless Hunter or the Crimson Moth duology, definitely pick this one up because it gives very similar vibes, especially in the first book with the cat and mouse situation. The writing is, I feel like, on a very similar level, like a YA easy to binge kind of style, but I honestly like the way this one is going more than I liked the way like Rebel Witch went, for example. So highly recommend this trilogy. Getting into more of a spooky season read, well, I thought this was going to be more spooky season at least. I read Hemlock and Silver by T. Kingfisher. This is a Snow White retelling, and to me, this is a retelling done right in the amount that it was reminiscent to Snow White, but also in how it was not just Snow White retold, like the same story. We follow Anya, who is a healer. She specializes in poisons and finding cures to poisons. She lives a quiet life in a small village, and at the beginning, the king comes and visits her and actually recruits her to move into the palace and try and seek a cure for his daughter, Snow. Snow has been sick for quite a while, and no one can figure out what's going on with her, but the king is now like, maybe someone is poisoning her, so that's why he seeks out Anya, and he's like, you need to help me figure out if she's being poisoned. If she is, you need to help me cure her. So that is our main plot. So you can immediately see the differences between like Snow White and this. Like, Snow isn't even our main character. Snow is just this secondary character who we are trying to heal. We also just follow a very different path. Like, we have similar elements. We have like poisons, we have apples, we have mirrors, we have like a stepmother character. So you can definitely see the ties and the inspiration from Snow White, but I did appreciate how the story was very different. So it didn't feel like you were just rereading something with different names slapped onto all of our characters. The style of writing in this book was very interesting to me as well. This was actually my first T. Kingfisher read ever, and I was surprised at how funny this book was. It feels like you're in a gothic setting, but then you have all of this humor and banter in it, which I found to be something refreshing for fantasy, and I actually really loved the first half of this book. I loved all of the poison theme. We actually got into depth about different types of poisons. I feel like the vibes were just right in the first half. It wasn't necessarily like spooky because of the humor in the book, but like I felt the October vibes at the beginning. However, the second half of this book really lost me. I feel like we changed our tone from this like funny poison mystery story to this adventure quest instead, and I just was not feeling like the action adventure quest. I was not in that mood. I did not expect that in this book, and I think because it caught me off guard, I ended up losing interest once we got too like action-y, adventure-y. I also found I couldn't really connect to the characters. Maybe there was too much going on. Maybe I was just so confused because we were so moody at the beginning, and then we went on this quest and I was like, hold on, I just need some time to like get to know my characters. There was a romance in this book that honestly did nothing for me. I feel like there was no real development in it and really didn't have to be there. But I would have honestly appreciated like a friends vibe or a found family vibe over the romance vibe that we got in this book. So yeah, it was kind of a half a hit, half a miss for me. So very, very conflicted about this one. A lot of you have recommended A Sorcerer Comes to Call for my next Kingfisher read, because at this point I'm on the fence as it stands right now. So a lot of you are saying like what did I just say? Sorceress Comes to Call, that one would maybe hit more for me, work more for me. So hopefully that's the case. Let me know if you have any other Kingfisher recs for me, because I feel like I would love her writing. There were just some weird things about this one for me. Okay, we have a big one next. Our next big read, literally so heavy, is Alchemised by Senlin Yu. I feel like I have talked about this one a lot in my reading vlog where I read this. We did do not a deep dive of this book, but I did chat with Freya quite a bit about our thoughts on this one in, I think, episode 16? I want to say episode 16 on the podcast. So check that out if you want to hear more thoughts. But this is a dark fantasy. We are set in a post-war environment, but also like a middle of the war environment as well. But basically before the story starts, our resistance has failed. We lost the big war and the evil have taken over. Whoa, my... That would not have been good if this fell on my laptop. Okay, maybe we'll just place her down here. That's safer. It doesn't look the best, but I feel like it's safer for everyone involved. We follow Helena. She was a healer throughout the entire resistance, throughout the entire war, but her and her entire side have now been captured because the war is over and they lost. Helena has, for whatever reason, lost a lot of her memories. And so now as a captive, the evil, or like the people that have captured her, are convinced that she has like very crucial, vital information that is important. And they need to figure out why Helena has lost her memories, and they need to try and find a way to dig those memories back up. So she is sent to the High Reeve. She has to now like live under him, and he is now tasked with trying to get these memories back from her. This is a really cool world. We have necromancy, we have a very, very, very dark setting, and I actually loved the magic and the world building in this one. There are so many necromancy books out there where you don't actually get detail about how the necromancy works. You just get a necromancy vibe, but I think this book had the like hardest magic system in terms of a necromancy magic system that I've seen. So I really appreciated that. And I keep flipping my rating back and forth about this one. When I finished the book, immediately I was like, this is a 4-star. The next morning I was like, this is a 4.25. And then now the more I think about it again, I'm like, maybe it's a 3.75. So I literally keep flip-flopping. I think I'm just gonna settle at a 4. You know, I'm so conflicted about this one because on one hand, as I mentioned, the world is very, very cool. I also think Senlin Yu's writing is really good. I think it's beautiful, but also so easy to read. It's one of those books where you can just honestly blast through so quickly. Like, yes, it's a 1,000-page long book, but I think their writing flows really well. It feels natural, so you don't have to flip back and reread sentences too much. Like, it's not clunky writing. I also do like the overall progression of the story, the whole idea behind it, and everything it represents. Like, it does dive really deep into what it's like to be in this post-war situation, what it's like to be in an active war situation. How do you decide like what's right and what's wrong? And then also we have this story of two characters finding each other in these really tough circumstances and honestly kind of trauma bonding over that. I think a lot of the story was done well. Things I had issues with. are I do feel like we needed a lot more backstory for our main protagonist. I found it really difficult to actually emotionally connect to the characters, which was such an interesting experience for me because while reading this, you know, you're reading these things happening and you're like, wow, these are really, really horrific. And for the most part, like a story like this would normally get me very emotional, but I didn't feel direct emotional impact for these characters. I didn't really feel connected to them, and I do think it's because we were missing backstory. We had a lot of things that were like slightly mentioned to us very briefly, but I was like, okay, let's expand on that. Like why is she feeling this way about this particular person? Why is she so sensitive about these particular topics? Like I needed to know why. I was just kind of told very, very briefly, but I was like, no, we need like a couple pages more to elaborate on this, and I was seeking that throughout the entire story. I also think, honestly, maybe an unpopular opinion, but I feel like the structure of this book maybe could have been reworked entirely. Like the way this book works is we have 3 parts, very distinct parts. I, like at the end of reading this, just thought maybe this would have been more effective as a dual timeline where we flip back and forth, because we do get quite a few parallels between like part 1, part 2, and part 3. And a lot of readers I've actually noticed have gone back and like reread part 1 after finishing the book, and then, you know, more things make sense when you read it after knowing everything. But you know, that just kind of signifies to me, like, why did you have to reread the book to get the full emotional impact of it? I feel like a book should give you the full impact on your first read, no? Like, just based on the structure of the book. That's why I do think, like, maybe if this was a dual timeline where we had our parallels presented more clearly, it would have been more emotionally effective. Those are just the thoughts that are lingering in my head. It was a great read. I'm actually excited to see what Senlin Yu does outside of this universe. I think there's so much talent here. Oh my gosh, this next one was a very exciting read for me. I'm so sorry. I probably should have vlogged reading this one, but I kept this one for myself. But we're gonna talk about it now. I read Heavenly Bodies by Amani Iriu. This has been on my radar for quite a while, but this is a romantasy. And what I was excited about for this one is that we have a celestial star-based magic system. And as someone who loves the stars, who loves like the skies and, you know, celestial things, I have been looking for a good book with a celestial magic system ever since I read Zodiac Academy and absolutely did not like it at all. And this one gave me what I wanted. So we do have magic based on the star signs. We have different regions that are all, they're kind of like slightly reworked star signs. So instead of like Aquarius, we have Aquaria, I think, or instead of Capricorn, we have Capri. Just little things like that. But it's very obviously like, you know, the star signs that we know. We follow Alara. She is the princess of Asteria, a kingdom ruled by the star Pisces. And Pisces in this world is the goddess of fate, darkness, and fear, I think. Oh, and also these stars are basically gods in this world. Like star equals god. However, another star, Ariete, he decides to attack Alara's kingdom because of this prophecy, this mysterious prophecy. So she ends up fleeing. But as she flees, she actually gets captured by the kingdom of Helios, which is the kingdom of light. And their purpose is they actually want to train her and use her as a weapon to kill a star. And who does she have to train with? None other but the crown prince of Helios. This was so much fun. It was a really fun, quick, easy read, but also just like packed with action and adventure and twists and turns. We go from kingdom to kingdom. We have magical creatures. We have prophecy, which is always fun. And we have like the star gods and fate and everything involved. But along with that, we have this backdrop of kingdoms and balls and parties and stuff like that. And I love that setting so much when you have high stakes, when you're going undercover into these like fun balls, but you're like pretending to be someone else and you're just like scoping out the scene and you have to figure out who to talk to and who to hide from. Like, it's just so much fun. I love like dressing up for a ball for an undercover situation. But what our protagonist is going through is also interesting as well. This book kind of reminded me of like a mix between Throne of Glass and When the Moon Hatched, but also with a lot of other stuff thrown in, because our character is sort of like getting over a block she has with her magic. There is something emotional that is impacting the way she can access her magic, and a lot of the story of this book is trying to figure out how to release that, like fighting your inner demons. And I love that sort of a plot direction action. The plot was also just so fast, almost like too fast, where you're reading something and you're like, hold on, let's just like sit and like breathe in this moment for a little bit. Like, it was so fast, which was a great thing because you never got bored while reading this. But yeah, there were some moments where I was like, okay, we need a little bit more time here to develop this moment a little more so we can get a little bit more character depth and emotion. And it was just a little bit too twisty at the end for me, where like, I love the twist, don't get me wrong, but it happened too fast and we needed a little bit more explanation for it. But I think that was just a common theme of this book, was like, it was so much, but it was maybe a little bit overdone, but at the same time so much fun. There were a few moments in this one as well where I was, you know, yelling at Laura, like, girl, what are you doing? Like, she's one of those protagonists that sometimes makes a few silly decisions, but also you get where she's coming from because of her past. This was so much fun, and the second book comes out quite soon, I believe, so I'm excited to pick up the second one, but that is Heavenly Bodies. I would recommend this one if you're looking for something that just like gets your heart racing. Okay, we have gone through all of the fantasies, so getting into romances next. I did read two of these. The first one was Fake Skating by Lynn Painter, which was the catfish of the century, or at least the catfish of the month, because I thought this was going to be a fun little figure skating romance because of the title of this book, but it was actually a hockey romance. Different type of skating completely. And as you guys know, I just, you know, I have no interest in hockey romance as a genre as a whole, but I got catfished and ended up reading a hockey romance by accident. I will say the overall experience was fun reading this one, so it was a pleasant surprise, and I'm actually glad I did end up picking this one up. This is a friends to lovers, second chance, fake dating sort of a situation. We follow Danny, and she's always had her best friend Alec her entire life growing up as kids. Like, they have just always been besties. However, Danny moved away 5 years ago, and the two of them lost touch. Like, one of them ghosted each other in this weird situation, and yeah, they have not kept touch since then. But now, after 5 years of separation, Danny has moved back into town for their senior year of high school. And so as Danny comes back, she's like, you know, hoping to reconnect with Alec, hoping to find her childhood best friend in him and just like smooth things over and figure things out. But when she gets back and sees him for the first time, she realizes that he is completely changed. He is not the same Alec that she knew, this like clumsy, you know, preteen type of a guy. He is now like the most popular star hockey player of their high school. And he is, you know, he's really good looking. He's like the catch of the school. He's a hot commodity. Everyone wants to be friends with him. Everyone wants to be with him. And he surprisingly now loves all of this attention. So Danny's just like, what happened to my friend? And while she's figuring this out, they end up in this fake dating situation for one reason or the other. And that is our story. This book was so high school. In good and bad ways, I think one thing I admired about this book was the way Lynn Painter was able to capture the high school essence so completely accurately. Danny, our protagonist, is a character who struggles with social anxiety, and I think the way Lynn Painter portrayed her experience as, you know, an anxious person in high school was so accurate that it was almost a little bit triggering for me, but kind of in a good way. Apart from that though, the high school experience was just a little bit too young for me. I think I'm just past the age group of the target audience and of someone who would appreciate the high schoolness of this book. There was just a lot of like high school slang, silly high school decisions, like lots of silly high school priorities that affected the overall arc of this story, and some of those really were just a little bit too much for me. The characters, I think, were also just trying so hard to be angsty teenagers that I don't really enjoy that anymore in my like reading journey. But outside of that, I do think the story was very cute. It was a blast to read. I obviously read through this very quickly, and I do appreciate everything that was happening outside of the romantic plot. Danny, as a character who had been moving, around from school to school for a lot of her high school experience, never had that sense of community, like tight-knit group of friends, and a sense of like true family. So I really liked that side of the story. It was very touching. I also really absolutely loved the grandfather character in this book, and there were a few moments that got me a little bit emotional. I'm gonna be completely honest. I feel like if you're looking for a fun winter romance that is just, easy, I would recommend picking this one up. There is a little bit of a extremely frustrating miscommunication third act conflict, which I think is quite common in a fake dating trope, and this book was not unpredictable, let's just say that. But it's a romance, it's fun, it's cute, I had a good time. Was it perfect? No, but I'm glad I picked it up. My next romance read was a Kindle read. So I read Mate by Ali Hazelwood. This was actually my in-person book club pick of the month, which is why I did pick it up. But this is the sequel to Bride. It is a paranormal romance. And if you are wondering if you can pick this book up before you read Bride, because, you know, a lot of romance series are more like interconnected standalones, I would definitely say for this one, you do have to read Bride first. It does kind of follow that interconnected standalone romance structure where like the first book follows one couple and the second book follows a complete different couple. But I think with this one, because of the paranormal aspect of it, there are a few things that you need to know going into this one. Like there are a lot of references to events and characters that we saw in Bride that like you would just have no idea what was going on if you hadn't read Bride first. But plot synopsis, you know what? I honestly don't think I can give you a plot synopsis without spoiling a major twist or reveal in Bride. So if you haven't read Bride yet and still plan on reading Bride, skip to the time code that I put on the screen here because yeah, the plot synopsis is going to give you a little bit of a spoiler, a big spoiler. But okay, plot synopsis for this one. We follow Serena, who is a half human, half werewolf hybrid, and she's actually the first publicly known human were hybrid. So she is a hot commodity now. Everyone wants to either like meet her or study her because she is now supposed to represent peace between humans and wares and also vampires. Because of that though, however, there are certain groups of people who are also now hunting her because they actually see her as a threat. So Serena now is forced with one option. She needs to just seek safety within the Northwest werewolf pack. And so she falls under the protection of the pack and also the alpha of this pack, Cohen, who actually also happens to be her mate. So that's basically the story of this plot. It's very silly. I do read these books as parodies of like the vampire, werewolf, paranormal romance genre as a whole. I do think Ali Hazelwood pokes fun at a lot of the tropes that tend to show up within this subgenre. I don't read these books as fantasy whatsoever. They are very much just rom-coms that are set in a slightly paranormal world. And if you read these with just like, you know, you don't take it too seriously, I think they are very fun. I always love Ali Hazelwood humor. I think she's just so like absurd and outrageous with her humor. And she also, I think she just understands the age group, you know? She understands growing up with Twilight and Vampire Diaries and all of these stories. And if you've experienced that vampire werewolf era, like these books are perfect for you because they make fun of you, but at the same time, they also give you, they scratch that itch. So I was enjoying this book for, I think the majority of it, to be honest. I was honestly enjoying the plot, even though it was like quite a silly plot. We also have like culty things that show up in this one, and I love like a cult-based story. So I was having fun. I did not love the end or like the second half of this book. Number one, because that is definitely where the spice ramped up, and it was just like a little bit too like wolf anatomy for me. Like if you think we got wolf anatomy in Bride, like wolf spice anatomy, let's be clear with that. There is much more of that in this one. I also have been having this issue with Ali Hazelwood books recently, like with Deep End, with this one, with, I don't know, probably a couple other ones, where the whole, like, all of these stakes, let's say, all of the stakes that we have, especially with the romance plot, are, I don't know, they're so built up through the book, and then at the end, they just become a complete non-issue. It's like we've, you know, built all of this stuff, like, oh, we can't be together because of XYZ. And then at the end of the book, it's just like all of those problems just disappear very conveniently. It's just like, okay, yeah, you guys go ahead and be together. It's fine. There was no problem to begin with. And I just have not been loving that. Like, I want a real conclusion. I want to tackle these issues head on, and I want to see a real solution to them. I don't want the problem to just go away conveniently and just to be like, oh, well, that's nice. Let's just be together now. So I don't know. I feel like we're lacking a little bit something at the end. Like I need a real explanation for things. I need a real conclusion. But yeah, all in all, that was Mate. It is a highly unserious read, but also just fun, just pure fun. That was my second romance read of the month. Diving into some of the fictions that I read now. This first one is a lit fic with a bit of a psychological mystery element to it. So this one is Madwoman by Chelsea Beaker. Very, very interesting read for me. First and foremost, this book is written in second person POV, which is unique in itself, but instead of addressing you as the reader, the narrator actually addresses her mother in the story. So the entire time she is talking to her mother as kind of like honestly a one-sided conversation. But our protagonist is Clove. She is someone who has suffered from a very traumatic childhood. So she witnessed her father being very abusive to her mother, and so she's grown up to be this very, very anxious person. But now in her adult years, she has settled into this very normal life, which is something that she really strives toward. You know, she wants a really regular house. She wants a really regular husband. She wants really regular children who are safe and healthy and just very normal, who go to school, and she wants to eat very healthy and clean. And along with this new life, she has essentially erased her entire past. Like, she's changed her name. She's made a new identity for herself. Like, she just does not talk about her past at all. Her current day husband doesn't even know who she was when she was a kid. Like, she's made up this complete false life, but she's, you know, relatively happy in it. One day, however, she receives this letter from a prison that threatens to throw everything into chaos. So it threatens to unravel all of these secrets and everything that she has pushed down and tried to hide from her past. And so now she has to deal with this. This was a very interesting book for me. I did not know what to expect going into it at all, but this is definitely a slower, character-driven literary story over a mystery thriller. We just really dive deep into the mind of Clove and how she thinks and how she represses things, and also how she convinces herself, sort of like justifies her own actions in her head. So I'm gonna be completely honest, the first bit of this book was very unpleasant for me to read and hard to get into because of all the anxiety that you were just being thrown into, and just kind of like honestly this like really convoluted mind. As we very slowly got these mystery elements intertwined, as we slowly flashed back to Clove's past and saw the things that happened in her childhood, we really built up this very interesting character that like you don't really love. She's definitely one of those unlikable protagonists that you just kind of like deal with. Like, you just have to be in her mind this entire story for this unique literary experience. And then only at the very end, I think we got faster paced. We got more thrillery, you know, more of these twists and turns happening. Although I will say a lot of the twists and turns were very predictable for me. Like, if you've read any other type of a thriller, you would probably be able to guess at least like 80% of the twists that happen at the end of this book. So honestly, I'm a little confused at what to think about this one. Like, it was equally parts shocking because it was just so different to anything that I had read in the past, and then also equally parts just like very predictable. Like, the story was very predictable, but the delivery that you got the story in was unique. So it was a very different experience to go through a story that didn't feel too fresh, if that makes any sense at all. So what I will say is this book is not a pleasant read. It's not a book that you want to pick up for escapism. It's not a book that you want to pick up to like enjoy your time, but I do think it is a meaningful read. I think there are a lot of messages in here. Like, we follow themes of motherhood and womanhood and, you know, supporting each other, but in this very twisted way. I don't know. Pick it up. Maybe if you're like in a reading slump and you're like, hey, you know what? I want something very different. Pick this one up. Try it out. I'm still very conflicted about it. I don't know how to feel about it, to be honest. I don't know if this is the type of book for me, but you know, I feel like it's always good reaching out, branching out into other types of books that you would normally not read. So that was Madwoman for me. Our second fiction is more of a contemporary fiction with a magical realism twist. So The Astonishing Color of After by Emily X. R. Pan. This one was also an interesting one for me. I think I did end up enjoying this one more than Madwoman, but I rated Madwoman higher, which is strange because I think the technical execution of Madwoman was done better, but I think I emotionally connected with this one a little bit more. So I don't know, ratings for books can be weird sometimes, but in this one, we follow Lee. She is a teenager in high school. At the beginning of the book, she finds out that her mother has committed suicide. So Lee starts to really struggle with this because number one, she's like, how did I not notice this coming? How did I not see the signs? And she's also feeling guilty because at the moment that this happened, she was actually at her best friend's house. So she's also thinking, you know, if I wasn't at my friend's house at this time, if I was at home instead, maybe I could have stopped this from happening. So Lee is going through all kinds of emotions. One night as she's sleeping, she wakes up to a chill. She looks outside and she sees this massive red bird. And immediately she just connects this bird to her mom. She just has this instinctual feeling like, this is my mom coming back as a bird to either tell me something, to just visit me, and this red bird leaves her a box with these kind of mystic clues. Lee takes this box as a sign to actually go to Taiwan and meet her grandparents for the first time. And this is like a whole side of the book because Lee is mixed. She is half Taiwanese and she is half Irish American, but she's never really connected to her Taiwanese side, which is her mother's side. She goes, she learns more about her heritage, and at the same time, she's also trying to find the bird, like try and meet the bird again because she wants to see her mother again, obviously. So the writing in this is beautiful. I really enjoyed it. The author really connected emotions to colors because our protagonist Lee is an artist in herself. Like she does like draw and paint and everything throughout the book. So whenever she's feeling emotions, she relates it to a color. So I feel like that was just a fun little touch to the feel of this book. And I will say I absolutely loved the whole like Taiwan side of the plot. I loved the idea of going and meeting your family and connecting with your cultural heritage and your roots. I love that. I think there were a lot of like myths and sort of like Taiwanese superstitions as well thrown into this book, which I really enjoyed. It really felt rich with all of this culture. What I didn't love about this book was this romance plot that was going on that really didn't have to be there because this romance plot took up half of the book. Like it was a clear like half divide where on one side we were dealing with Lee and her homecoming and her grief and, you know, finding her mother and connecting with her family. And we had this whole half of the book that was her dealing with these, you know, romantic feelings with her best friend. And I just was not here for the romance plot at all. I just did not care for it. It was very angsty teenager romance. I'm just past it. You know, if I was younger and read this, maybe I would have loved it. And, you know, to be very fair, this book is marketed as YA. So like completely fair on that front, but I just feel like we spent so much time with this romance plot. I got bored reading this book because I didn't want the romance. I just wanted the family stuff. I was reading this and feeling the book was very awkwardly paced. This book is, I think, close to 500 pages long, and I, throughout the whole book, was like, why is this taking so long? I'm like so interested in what's happening, but I also feel so bored at it, and then I realized it was because half, literally 250 pages of this book are dedicated to the romance, and it felt like we were trying to tell two stories in one, but the stories were not meshing well together. So those were my thoughts reading this one. I would still recommend it. I think the writing is beautiful. I'm excited to see what Emily XR Pan writes next. This is a new author to me, but yeah, I didn't completely love this one because of the romance. Next up, I did read a thriller. So I read Not Quite Dead Yet on my Kindle. This was actually our Fable book club pick for this month, and I feel like it was such a good one for Halloween because it's literally set on Halloween night and, you know, 7 days afterwards. But the premise of this one is Jet, our protagonist, gets brutally attacked on Halloween. She wakes up in the hospital and is told that she either has 7 days to live or she undergoes this really dangerous surgery that has a very like low success rate. And so Jet decides, no, I'm not going to do the surgery. I'm just going to live out my last 7 days and I'm going to figure out who did this to me, because Jet does remember what happened to her, but she never saw the perpetrator. Like she never saw who was behind her and like hit her on the head. So she goes full on detective for the last 7 days of her life, true Holly Jackson style. And I love these types of books from Holly Jackson. I love when she writes about these protagonists who just like, you know, they take notes. They're so detail oriented. They're like figuring out the timeline of, you know, the sequence of events of what led up to the crime. It's just so much fun to read. And I also love that we had this really set time constraint in the story. Like we had 7 days. That was our story, which I think also helps pace a story very well when you have such a set amount of time. Like you can't linger on things for too long when you only have 7 days to live. But apart from that, I also found there to be a very surprising amount of kind of emotional depth in this one. We didn't go like deep, like it was definitely a fast-paced thriller, but for a thriller, I was surprised at how much emotion we had, because not only is Jet trying to solve her own murder, but at the same time, she's also trying to come to terms with her own death. Like she basically accepts herself as already dead. She refers to herself as like already deceased, but she goes through these ups and downs of like, hey, I don't want to die, versus like, well, you know what, I'm already dead, so I'm gonna do this anyways. I'm gonna do this risky thing anyways, because like, what was it gonna do, kill me? And I surprisingly got quite emotional at the end of this book. I didn't like full on cry, but like, I'm not gonna lie, I got kind of close, and that was so unexpected for me. I am a little bit confused though as to why this book was marketed as adult, because it does still read similar to Holly Jackson's YA books. It felt like a Holly Jackson YA thriller, but maybe with a little bit more gore, maybe with a little bit more descriptive writing about the violent acts that were happening, and maybe just a little bit more emotional depth with Jet coming to terms with what she was going through. But overall, it still felt like one of Holly Jackson's super addictive YA thrillers. Super fun. Definitely recommend it. It's a perfect October spooky season book, but you could honestly read it in November or at any other time of the year, to be completely honest. And then our last book that we read was a classic, and it was Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I've been wanting to read this one for so long, obviously because it's such a cozy story. I love the story. I love the multiple movie adaptations that are made. I feel like I don't have too much to say about this one because it was just a heartwarming read. Like, I obviously already am so familiar with the story, but just seeing the original words where the story came from is so wonderful. Like, it just made me feel all of these warm fuzzy feelings inside. I feel like I don't need to give you the plot synopsis of this one because it's such a well-known story, but we follow 4 sisters as they live in New England during the Civil War. It's just so heartwarming, oh my goodness. And as I was reading this, I was picturing like a mishmash of the multiple movie adaptations in my head of these moments happening. I did realize though at the end of reading this that my copy of this book doesn't actually tell the entire story. Like, it doesn't include all the pages. It's only really half the story. I didn't get the end of it, but I guess, I don't know, this copy, maybe there's a part 2 that comes in this edition. This is the Paper Mill Press edition. It only came with the first half of the story, which I'm gonna be completely honest is my favorite half of the story. Like, I like the first half over the second half, so maybe it's good that I only read the first half. But you know, maybe one day I will pick up the second half and continue finishing the story. But this was just a nice cozy read. I also read this right after Alchemised, and I think it was very, very well needed. Like, I just needed something cozy, you know, a book that made me feel safe after reading a book like that. So that is Little Women. Those are the 12 books that I read in the month of October, not including my 3 partial audio rereads. That being said, let's get these books onto the shelves. That's it. That's gonna be it for this wrap up. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please leave me a like and a comment. If you don't know what to comment down below, let me know what you read in October. If you like me, subscribe, do that bell thing, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!